Welcome, friends, to the Media Roundtable special edition. And this is a special edition. We always dive deep into the secrets of the craft of audio advertising and give our point of view on industry topics in service of the chief audio officer, that person who is tasked with finding success for a brand using audio as their tool, whether that's podcast, streaming, or radio. I'm Dan Granger. I'm the CEO and founder of Oxford Road, and we're going to give you an inside listen to an event that we held in July that was pretty exclusive. So I want you to put yourself in a room at a small dinner theater hidden as a speakeasy inside of the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. This is a historic hotel, almost 100 years old, and the room is almost as old. And this is a place where a lot of things have happened. Marilyn Monroe met Arthur Miller before they got married. You might see Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Judy Garland might be on stage, Frank Sinatra. There's a lot of history in this room, and imagine that it is glowing, and you are sitting in there surrounded by 30% of what is today the podcast industry, almost all brands. This was the beginning event for our Chief Audio Officer Summit, our second annual event this year, which we just held in July. And our welcome reception was this event that we're about to play a recording from for you here today. It was very exclusive. It is not an environment where pitching is allowed. This is about learning. This is about collaborating for brands to talk to brands about how to better use this industry that we all work in. And we're always in service of the chief audio officer, but never more so than when we were actually taking you inside of our summit event, which may be the most significant gathering of brands that support this space that happens over the course of a year. So we're going to play for you our first session from that event here, which we had a fireside chat. I had the pleasure of having a fireside chat with Brittany Clevenger, who heads up the audio marketing program for BetterHelp, and Ashley Flowers, who is the CEO of audiochuck and host of Crime Junkie. And I just want to give you a little bit of context on why we had this conversation. You know, a lot of what we talk about at the summit, and you're going to be getting little bits and pieces of it over the next few weeks. But, you know, the purpose is really to help brands find more success in audio and figure out how they can collaborate with the industry in a more effective way so their needs are met and their voices are heard and they can collaborate with each other. That's really the point. But that's not the only point. We all need to meet our business objectives. And our business objectives really are the barrier to entry before you can truly be a purpose-driven brand. I think we all work pretty hard. It's a competitive marketplace. And to do that, hopefully there's a reason why. And for a lot of us, it's just a job. You punch in, you punch out, and you really do it to support the life you have outside of the work that you do. But for many of us, we want to see purpose inside of the work that we do. And when we have the Chief Audio Officer events, we really try to focus on three key pillars, and that is purpose, profit, and people. You're going to hear a lot about profit, but that's not what this session is about. There were a lot of people that got to meet each other and build relationships, but that's not really what this is about. This is about purpose, because through Ashley Flowers and audiochuck, you get to hear how one creator has created not only a business that has achieved billions of downloads in audio, but also somebody that's solving crimes, that's actually had cold cases solved through the work that they're doing on their podcast. This shows the meaning that our work can have. When you're a brand and you support a piece of content, that content can do a lot of different things. It can harm people, it can misinform people, but it can also enlighten people. It can delight them. It can actually solve crimes. Additionally, Brittany at BetterHelp talks in great detail about the impact that her work has, not just to get more customers for BetterHelp. Of course, that's part of the business, but more importantly, the impact that it's having on the world. Millions of people have been impacted by this product and are managing their mental health in new ways that may not have been possible to them before. And so when she goes to work every day, she knows the impact that it's having, in addition to the fact that there's been a lot of stigma around the management of our mental health. Well, through the work that's happened in audio, they've been able to help remove some of that cultural stigma Because when you hear from hundreds of different creators about how they take care of their own mental health, and in partnership with BetterHelp, they actually know that they're making an impact on their lives, and it makes it a little less scary for people that might want to get therapy that haven't been able to do that. So 2 use cases, but the bottom line is this. I believe, and we believe at Oxford Road, that audio is the greatest canvas for the free and open exchange of ideas in media. It is not governed by just sound bites, and it doesn't have to be limited in character count like a tweet. This is a platform that allows real unpacking of a conversation, real deep dives into a discussion, critical thinking, and it's a way to expand our minds. And when we use that in productive ways, through brands that are high quality brands, doing a real good and having a purpose for customers, that helps the marketplace, that helps the culture, that helps the world. And the shows that they affiliate with that align with their values are important too. So this is the first step in a conversation about audio. And I'm excited to invite you to be a fly on the wall in that conversation and come into that room with me and really hear what these 2 really important contributors to this industry have to say. There's 2 very powerful women in this industry who are here tonight, and they're going to come have a conversation with us. The first is Brittany Clevenger. Brittany, come on up, Brittany. Yeah, make some noise for Brittany. Brittany's with that little company called BetterHelp, who is the leading, come on up. Brittany is the leading buyer of podcast media. And so have a seat. We also have Ashley Flowers. Please give it up for Ashley Flowers. A couple words about Ashley. Ashley has a show you might have heard of called Crime Junkie on a little network called audiochuck. She has gotten, did I read 2 billion downloads? Is that real?
2.5.
What? That was like yesterday, Joe. Yeah, well done. Okay, so we're gonna have a little chat, and I'm gonna give you a microphone.
Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for being here. First things first. Okay, why audio? Why? Let's start with you, Ashley.
Oh, me. Hi.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So before I had a podcast, I was in medical sales for a while, and I would spend 8 hours a day in the car driving from hospital to hospital, and I would listen to audiobooks. And then Britt, who is my best friend and co-host of Crime Junkie, was trying to get me to listen to podcasts forever, and I said, that sounds stupid, no. And then I gave it a shot, and it was just the most, I don't know, I couldn't explain it. It was like the most intimate medium. I felt like I was making friends. It felt fresh. It felt like I was part of a conversation, and that was so much of what I wanted to carry over when I made the show, is that it wasn't a one-way thing, that podcasting can really be two-way, and that's what I absolutely love about it.
And how about you, Brittany?
That's so funny, because I said the same thing. I was looking for work in Houston. Raise your hand if you came from digital. Anybody? Woo!
Couple of them.
Yeah, and so I had an offer on the table, and this recruiter said, before you accept this position, I need you to go talk to these people, and you might love this job. I said, well, what do they do? And she said, podcast. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Why would I want to do that? Famous last words.
It's okay to be wrong.
We get that a lot.
Completely wrong. Anyway, by the end of the day, that was Ad Results Media. I was literally begging them. Woo! I was begging them to hire me, and it was the best decision I ever made. And when I ended up at BetterHelp, they had actually already scaled one time. I think we've scaled 3 times. One time to like 24 million in spend in 2020. And they were very smart in realizing that it would be a great idea to bring in an audio professional just to lead audio. So they found me, and that was my job. It was made for me.
Well, and I want to get a little more technical on the buying side for you. How do you think about, when you look across audio, how do you think about the different channels and how they split out?
We could have a whole panel.
We will. And by the way, she's also on our measurement panel tomorrow. Is that right? So you're going to get to hear more of her thoughts on attribution. I know we want to talk about attribution.
Yeah, it's been very step by step at BetterHelp. My first, focus there was really just to scale podcast as quickly as possible, which we did. And it was a good 2-year process. And then, I had been telling my co-founder that if we weren't also trying to conquer streaming and linear radio, that we were sleeping, right? That somebody earlier in this room said that all channels work. They just kind of work at different levels, right? So it's been, my work is never done, just trying to bring more people in to have accessible, affordable therapy using different audio channels. But the channels also constantly change, which makes my eye twitch every single day. It never ends. So it's really been like a step-by-step process. So I've been conquering the channels separately. And now as the channels and measurement has evolved, we're starting to look at how the pieces all fit together, which we'll talk a lot more about
It's
tomorrow.
a puzzle. Ashley, let's talk a little bit about your product. So can you talk about what it is that you do at audiochuck? I think 95% of us probably have an idea, but can you just introduce it a little bit and what the company is?
Yeah, sure. So audiochuck makes compelling, mostly true crime content. That was what I loved so much. It really was a passion project of mine. And I wanted to, I've always consumed it forever and ever. And I always felt like I needed to give back to this community I was taking from, even as a consumer. So when I went into making true crime content, I came at it with like a thought process of I need to change the way we do this. I think that we can do it more responsibly, more ethically. I think that we can create really, compelling, entertaining content that doesn't create more harm. And it's not necessarily the easiest, but it is like a better way. So when I got into this, I wanted to change the way the whole true crime genre was really approached in podcasting, but now we're extending that even into video, into TV and film and literature. And that was really the mission when I got in.
So I want to talk a little more about that because, in the marketing space, a lot of times what happens is genres will get blocked for one reason or another. Right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard like no news or, or no comedy or no true crime, right? Why do people have that perception of true crime? What is it that they're trying to get away from? And how have you been able to program against that?
Yeah, I think what people don't want to be a part of and shouldn't be a part of is sensationalizing trauma. It's the voyeurism. It's creating more harm, and I think that is traditionally what was just so widely accepted. And I think over the last 6 years of us in this space, I've seen a drastic change. I've seen people come with us, and we've created content. And it's not like, again, I think that I didn't come at it saying like what's going to be brand safe or what's advertiser safe. I came at it saying like if I was the sister of the victim in this story, like I'm making the podcast that she can hear. And in doing so, we're making content that is brand safe. We're like our listeners, we have the biggest audience of women, the second largest audience of men in all of podcasting, and they're coming to us because they want our content. So there's a little of this misnomer where it's like, oh, it's so scary, but this is where our people are, and they're coming to us because they believe in how we're doing it, and we're really thoughtful in how we do it. So not only are we not sensationalizing, we're actively doing good, but even the way we think about our advertisers and placing ads. I have, from episode 1, before I ever thought I'd ever have an advertiser, we were writing into designated ad breaks in areas that didn't have sensitive content. And so I think that we're trying to just be better. I hope we get to a place where true crime isn't scary anymore, but I think there's a lot of true crime that's responsible and not scary.
Just for the folks in the room that may not know the whole roster, so Crime Junkie is really the signature dish. Can you talk a little bit about the breadth of your portfolio?
Yeah, so we've got Crime Junkie, which is a weekly show. The Deck is also a weekly show that I host, and we have a team of reporters that do original reporting on unsolved cases where we work with families and law enforcement on every single one. We've got a limited series called Counterclock. That's an investigative series into unsolved cases. A limited series called The Deck Investigates. Another weekly show called Dark Down East. We're relaunching a show that I used to do called Supernatural, which is just a little bit of fun in a lot of the dark stuff that we do. And then we've got Full Body Chills, which is a fiction, like horror podcast that we do during Halloween. So we've got kind of like the breadth of things, but really true crime is our home. It's what I love.
Well, and that's not always necessarily violent crime, right? I've seen you go into other genre or other facets as well.
Yeah, we just did a really big episode on Crime Junkie about online scams. That had an incredible fan response, and there's some cool stories that came out of that.
Okay, Brittany, can you talk a little bit about BetterHelp as a business? What is the value provided for customers, and what are some of the values behind it?
Yeah, I don't know how familiar everyone is with therapy, in-person therapy, online therapy. BetterHelp really believes in just making therapy more accessible and affordable. We support whatever that looks like for you, whether that's going to an in-person therapist, which I did for years. We want to make it easier to access. A lot of the values that drive our business, we want to be trustworthy. We want to be empathetic. We actually have empathy scores with our QA and all of our member success, which is really amazing. I could talk.
How do you get an empathy score? I want to know more about this.
Yeah, just when our member success is serving customers, we have an entire algorithm that scores tickets and their interactions and gives them an empathy score.
And why did you want to be part of a business like that?
Do you want the real story?
Do you guys want the real story? I mean, I'm curious.
It's really, I love telling this story. It's very vulnerable. So in 2020, I found myself pregnant during a pandemic, and my partner and I were no longer together. And as soon as the pandemic started, we broke up, and I couldn't go to the office. I couldn't go to the grocery store, and I had my first baby in my belly, and I started searching for online therapy. And I found a company called BetterHelp, and my therapist literally saved my life. Every week, I could not wait to talk to Vicki. Shout out to Vicki in Austin, Texas, wherever you are. Woo, Vicki! She grounded me. Every single week, she gave me all the tools that I needed to the point that I just could not wait to get on those therapy sessions. Told all my friends, all my family about BetterHelp. I said, you guys got to do this. It's so affordable compared to what I used to pay for in-person therapy. Also love my in-person therapist. So then I was at Ad Results. I loved my job. I don't know why I loved getting my butt kicked every day so much in agency life, but I loved it. And I came to this place where I said, I just really want to use my skills to make the world a better place. So I told, some friends at the time, I said, something's coming. I don't know what that is, but it's coming and I know it. And I really believe in speaking things into existence. And a few months later, I had a message from a recruiter at BetterHelp asking if I would like to interview for their podcast advertising role that they had just created. And I said, oh, there's my job. And my child's dad said, you haven't even interviewed for it. I'm like, first of all, I don't need that negativity. Second of all, that's my job. And I was rushed through and I had an offer on the table before the second person even made it to the final round. I'm very passionate about emotional well-being. If you do business with me, you know how I do business. We're friends. I care about you. And so BetterHelp it was my job. And hopefully I get to stay for a very long time. Thank you. That's the real story.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to go into a little bit more on the stigma with you. Because it's had a stigma, right? I mean, some of us live in California, so it's a little less, but it's out there, right? How much has that shifted during your time? Because I have to think even just getting all of these hosts to stand up and say, it's okay, I do this. Do you have any type of metric that you guys watch to know how culture is adapting?
Yeah, we're constantly doing studies and live studies and surveys and things like that. But I can just say, just from audio, the difference that I have seen over the last few years it's wild, and it's honestly the coolest thing I've ever gotten to be a part of, right? So early on at BetterHelp, I told, my boss, they said, close your eyes, I'm going to go buy every male sports focused show that I can find. And he was like, oh gosh, okay, go ahead. And they all worked, because we knew that podcast is so powerful with the endorsement. And if you've heard me talk on panels, I talk about this all the time. Podcast is so powerful, it will convert audiences that other channels don't always convert, right? And we have seen, just from 4 years ago when I started at the company, we used to have, I wouldn't say a lot of people turning the brand down for endorsement, but we certainly had more than we do now. So I've just been so lucky to be a part of this journey, and I see the change in people that are, once upon a time said, you can't advertise on our show at all. We obviously went back and asked again. And then they said, okay, you can run producer red spots. We said, okay, great, we will. We went back again. Now they're reading the spots themselves. It's been a really amazing journey.
Yeah, I mean, it just to think about the societal impact of changing, destigmatizing something that's so important. And by the way, if you can share, how many people are active with BetterHelp today in 2024?
Active right now, I don't want to give you the wrong number. I can tell you we've served 4.8 million people, which is, thank you. So it's so crazy. And what's even crazier is just to see that people like Ashley Flowers, guys, I'm on a stage with Ashley Flowers. Like, that's so cool. She's amazing. She has turned so many people onto therapy. It's just really, it's wild to watch how strong and powerful podcast is, and the vast numbers of people that are not only signing up for therapy, but then if you go to, like our reviews page, dozens to hundreds of people a day are writing about their positive experiences with therapy. And so many of them found it because of their favorite host that they choose to listen to every week. The sheer numbers are just wild.
And I think it is because, so you talked about, we're in California therapy. Like, I'm from Indiana, and I think people they like hearing from someone who's like themselves. And we believe this is like when you can find a brand that you connect with so much, it's so special, because we love BetterHelp so much. They've been such a partner forever, but that's a free service we pay for all of our employees at the office as well. So it's it's good synergy, but yeah, we've converted a lot of Midwesterners.
Well done. Yeah. Well, keep up the good work. I've been doing therapy a long time, and during Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm like, I don't want to just tell everybody happy Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm like, I'm gonna have my therapist come onto our call, and we're going to do a little one of these, right? The most awkward meeting I've ever had in my life. I think I freaked out the whole team. They're like, what's wrong with Dan? Why is he doing this? But, it's real, and I think it's meaningful when you can come and actually say publicly that you're doing something that's healthy, that people may be, reticent to take the plunge. So, and I think that's the point about audio. I want to get back to you, Ashley. Can we talk about user stories a little bit? Can we talk about some of the real world impact that you've seen from what you've been able to do with your show?
Yeah, it's so wide ranging. Obviously, when I first got into it, I'm like, I want to solve all the cold cases, and we have. I started a nonprofit in 2020 when I realized that so much of the time, the only issue between an unsolved case and a solved case was funding. And so I started a nonprofit called Season of Justice, and that has gone on to solve over 10 homicides. We've named over 11 Jane and John Does. So there is this yes, we're solving cases. Well, thank you. But we're also the part that I didn't expect, and I think has been equally as meaningful, is the people that we've impacted. So we do a lot of education, we do a lot of awareness, and the amount of domestic violence is something that we talk about every year, for example. And we're actually going back right now and trying to catalog all the people we have had reach out who say that they got out of a relationship before things escalated too far because of something they learned on our show. There is a young woman who, because of the stuff she learned on our show, was able to solve her own sister's homicide. because of what she learned, and she like that the police weren't doing anything. She knew the steps to take. There was a man who we helped completely exonerate because of people who were listening to the show, and it's like a case from the 60s. It's like the stuff that you don't think can like talking about it makes a difference, but you know the right people hear the story who can make a difference. And so there's been a lot of really tangible things, whether it's like having that direct connection with listeners who we helped save from something, the online scams. We literally, like, we got someone who said, literally 30 seconds after I listened to your episode, the exact scam happened to me and I knew what to do. So it's really cool. I mean, it runs the gamut, but there's like very real world applications.
That's incredible. From a little podcast.
A little podcast out of my spare room, named after my dog.
I love that. Chuck.
Chuck, audiochuck. Chuck's my dog.
Brittany, same question. Can you talk about any of the real world experience? And thank you for sharing your own. But what type of stories do you get to hear about from the lives that get positively impacted?
They never end. And it's really special to work for a company whose product is the actual mission. And so every single thing we do every single day is focused on just making life a little bit lighter and easier for people, right? I mean, I have the coolest job ever. So it literally never ends. One of my favorite, most recently, in an email that we received was from a man who said that he lost his relationship, got into therapy, and realized that he was the problem. And now they're married. He said, I'm married to the love of my life. And it's because one of his favorite hosts had been reading, for BetterHelp for years. And it took him years to finally, sometimes, I'm sure this is like relevant to all of us. Like sometimes we're the problem. It's not that easy to admit, right? And it took the relationship that he had with his favorite host that he had been listening to for years to finally give him the courage to say, maybe I'm not perfect. And that's not an easy thing to say. And his email was long and beautiful and heartfelt. And at the end, he said, and now I'm married to the love of my life. And we get that stuff 24/7. I could go on and on. Yeah, that was one of my favorites recently.
What a bonus. And Ashley, when you guys solve a crime, do you guys have some ritual of celebration that you do?
No, and this is what I've got to get better at it. It feels.
I should have prepped that question.
I know, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. It feels like more of a responsibility, I think, than an achievement. And it's like, yeah, okay, we hit 2.5 billion downloads, but that doesn't mean anything if we didn't do this other thing. So it feels like, okay, good, we're doing our job, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. Now let's keep working. And I'm getting I'm trying to get better at celebrating.
Is there a mission statement or something that everybody just rallies behind to make that clear?
It's the right stories, the right way for the right reasons. That's kind of our motto that we believe in.
2.5 billion downloads. That's a lot for a podcast. So can you talk about, just kind of switching gears into the business part of it? How did you grow, and what was the growth story?
Well, it started very grassroots, where I put a magnet on my car and drove around town. But it really was, I believed in what I was making so much, and I felt like I was the person I was making the content for. So again, I didn't get into podcasting because it was like picking up steam. I didn't get into true crime because it was having a moment. I loved it so much. I knew I was the fan I was making content for, and I believed I could do it a better way. And I think I did all the right marketing things, right? I did the cross promotions. I bought ad space. I'm driving around with my magnets. I'm leaving cards everywhere. But you can bring all the people in the world if you don't have the content to make them stay. And it was different than anything else that was out there at the time. And then I continued to listen to the audience. The very first employee I ever hired was fan engagement. I talk about it being a two-way street, and I wanted to hear from them so that every show I added after, every new show we brought onto the network was something that they were looking for and would continue to feed them. I mean, that's why all of our shows, no matter how big, have a 90 to 100% sell-through rate. I'm super serving my listeners.
Delayed gratification. It's a big deal. And it's so wonderful when you hear it panning out that way, when you just focus on the right fundamentals and then the scoreboard catches up, right? Brittany, a lot of people, we asked some people, hey, we're doing this summit, we're gonna have a lot of people coming out, like, if you could have one CAO who's on the Mount Olympus of chief audio officers in the world, and multiple people were like, Brittany Clevenger. Okay, so there's a lot of people that are, I guess everyone that advertises is on the BetterHelp spectrum in terms of the scale they've been able to achieve. What advice do you have for people that want to build a program successfully, that want to follow in your footsteps?
I love this question, and you're going to love my answer.
We'll see about that.
I cannot imagine. I mean, audio is pretty simple compared to some other channels. I could not imagine coming in and having to figure everything out on my own. Really, as a buyer, sometimes you have to play Inspector Gadget to figure out who's selling what and how they're selling, because people use different names and terms for things. And then, if they're selling impressions, that does not mean the same thing everywhere, right? We know that. So one of my number one pieces of advice is find an agency, find a consultant, talk to someone like me or at another brand. I have so many new brands in the space every single week, no joke, emailing me, LinkedIn messaging saying, can I just spend 30 minutes with you to ask you a boatload of questions? These are really powerful marketers at some brands that blow my mind sometimes. And they are like, is it bought on CPM? How does it work? So I think finding somebody who has spent years figuring everything out is one of the best things that a brand can do, because they're going to do the heavy lifting for you. They're going to handle a lot of the logistics and the ad ops and the paperwork that you don't want to. And they're going to give you your best shot at scaling. So I say find a professional, whether that's a brand, a consultant, or an agency.
And how much do you need to budget for a test? What do you say when you get that question? Not that anyone's ever asked that.
Also a great question. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, if I would throw a figure out at somebody, I would usually say $150K to $250K over a quarter. My worst nightmare as a marketer is when at the end of a test, a provider or publisher comes to me and says, well, you didn't spend enough. I'm like, oh my God, you just wasted a lot of my time and my money. So, our goal is always to spend the least that we can, but to know that we gave it a good shot. That is when I was on the agency side years ago, at least like $250K over a quarter, I think was really great. I don't know, as the landscape has changed, I don't know if that still is typical, but that's usually what I would tell a brand.
Well, and I do want to talk about the landscape changing. And I wonder it'll be so interesting to hear your perspective on this, Ashley, but when you think about how the audio space is getting better for what you do, and what the opportunities that are being created are, and also what are the challenges, what are the things that are making it harder for you? What do you see?
Me or her? Oh, me? Okay.
We'll start with you and give Ashley a minute.
Yeah. Oh, we could totally have another panel on this.
Yeah. That's tomorrow.
Yeah. A lot of the challenges, obviously measurement and attribution is always a thing, but I think that's really more on the brand side as your internal models are changing, whether you're last click or using an MTA, all of that plays a big role. I think as the landscape changes, now we see more people listening to more shows. We have more ads within episodes. We have more brands advertising. And so we just live in a space where I don't feel like all creators take the time and have the thought and care and professionalism that this woman has right here, where she just said, we literally were putting ads into parts of our episode that didn't have such sensitive topics, right? The listener experience, I think, is very different these days, and we're always fighting to pay attention to that. That's the most important thing. So I think that's probably one of my biggest challenges is really quantifying the effect. And, BetterHelp spends enough to essentially do its own independent study. So we've been really looking into those things. How much does ad stacking affect performance? How does ad delivery affect performance? How do we separate that by ad server, by, publisher, et cetera? Who are the people doing the best job, right? We really want to highlight those. That's probably my main struggle, is really keeping up with like the saturation and making sure that we still are respecting the integrity of this wonderful channel that really is all about the listener's relationship with the host.
Ashley, anything from your perspective?
It's so interesting. And again, I feel like I snuck my way here because we met a few weeks ago basically, and I was like, can I just listen to how everyone's talking? Because we're getting squeezed on the other end, and the hardest thing that I'm facing is fighting it off, right? So it is just throw in another mid-roll, and I'm like, no, it totally changes the listener experience, and then they're gonna just learn to fast forward. And I try and be super careful about again, I'm not placing it at the exact same time all the time, so they don't know when to expect it. And so I feel like there is this battle that I don't there's a middleman that is the battle. And if I don't know if part of it is the brands and the content creators having closer relationships, because I think we have the exact same goals. I want long-term relationships. I want the ads to succeed. But I think the struggle for us is feeling that squeeze from the people selling our space, which is just squeeze one more. It's we'll do 3 back to back. It doesn't matter. And it's a very short-sighted thing.
We're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow.
Perfect.
Also, no, I don't know the answer, by the way. I'm just lofting up the information and the observations. I don't know what the answer is.
What's next for both of your brands?
More audio.
Yeah, there we go.
International. We now have therapy for
Also,
all. We have therapists on the ground in the UK. We've got 3,000 plus. We have therapists in Australia, and so with actual people and therapists in on the ground in these markets, we can provide a much better user experience and make BetterHelp and therapy more affordable and accessible for everybody.
All right, well, this is wonderful. To be continued.
Thank you.
Brittany Clevenger and Ashley Flowers, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to say thank you to our sponsor for this event. This conversation was brought to you by Seeker, the creators of the Civility Score. Thank you for joining us. And this podcast is brought to you by Oxford Road, where we want you to succeed in audio and use your influence for good. As members of the marketing community, we have the power to advance voices that don't just entertain, but edify, and to build bridges across differences so we can have open-minded, fair-minded discussions about the most important topics of our age. If you're a marketer and you're looking to align your brand values with extraordinary business outcomes, reach out to our agency, Oxford Road, by going to oxfordroad.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Influencer. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, hit us up, info@mediaroundtable.com. Good news, bad news, constructive criticism. We're interested in what you have to say to make this a more valuable podcast for your routine. Don't forget to check out Ad Infinitum. That is Oxford Road's audio creative focused podcast hosted by Stu Redwine, VP of Creative Services. Start at episode 1, and you will learn a lot about how to make your message yield the best results possible in the market based on some of the folks that we've had on there. Thank you to our guest speakers, as well as Bianca, Kyle, Haley, Ezra, Mary Jane, Everett, Neil, and the team at Podcast One. And as always, influence responsibly.